like we're beauty queens.
All right, almost time. It's the last time, you all. Hopefully, knock on wood. Last virtual meeting.
You never know, Myra.
I know, that's why I immediately knocked on wood. Hey, we're ready. We're ready to shift as the need comes along. So we've gotten lots of practice.
Years of practice.
2 years of practice, yeah. All right, so it's 6 p.m. now. Looks like we have everybody. So I'm gonna call to order the March 15th, 2022 City of Woodland City Council meeting. The meeting is being held pursuant Government Code Section 54953, which allows us to hold remote meetings. We welcome the public to participate. The ways to do so are outlined on the agenda. Okay, all right. So Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Present.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Present.
Councilmember Landsberg.
Present.
Councilmember Stallard.
Present.
Mayor Vega.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, now we're gonna have the Pledge of Allegiance. So Councilmember Garcia Cadena, would you mind leading us?
Of course.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to item
Recording in progress.
Okay, item D, communications. So Madam Clerk, is there any member of the public who has submitted an email or voicemail for general public for items not otherwise on our agenda?
No, nothing.
Okay.
Not even the speed demon?
Nope.
They finally ran out of funding, Rich, our volunteers.
They ran out of $7 gas.
Oh, that's right. Okay, all right, so item E, communication, so council comments and updates. All right, so let's get started with Councilmember Landsberg. Do you mind going first?
Don't mind going first. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it. As a reminder to everyone in the community, as well as council and staff, please mark your calendar for April 8th, Friday, April 8th, celebrate Woodland Community Festival. The celebration will include, amongst acts of kindness from the Rotary Clubs, a concert by Woodland's own sold-out band, performances by our young people's music and dance groups, a kids zone which will feature activities and crafts and an inflatable obstacle course. The Woodland Street Cruisers will bring a representation. We're going to have our Woodland antique fire trucks. We're going to have, for I think the first time, I'm not sure, the live fire dancing, which would be great to see. And this is an opportunity for everyone to get involved in the 150th time capsule, which we're working on. So if you have an opportunity to stop at our booths that we're going to have up on April 8th, you can participate in the 150th time capsule that will be in place. Festivities are going to start about 5 p.m. on that Friday night and should end about 9:30, 10 o'clock. Secondly, Madam Mayor, I wish to thank the Woodland Tree Foundation for sponsoring once again and organizing another great tree planting event last weekend. Turnout was great, and it was we got a lot of work done in a short period of time. But I wish to extend a shout out to the young people who showed up, young people who learned the importance of a tree canopy in our community. I appreciate seeing all those young people, besides us old guys, but young people really were a good thing to see. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. Councilmember Stollard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Last Saturday was quite a day in our community, and I do appreciate the tree event as well. But also the robotics group that operates with all of our high schools had an open house at Douglas demonstrating one of their remarkable robots. And they've done exceedingly well in both national and international competitions. And we can be very proud. There's 100 kids involved in that, and all the parents and teachers that help make that program go. I want to express my appreciation. Also, it was the second anniversary of Luca, a wonderful clothing store in downtown Woodland. And Madam Mayor, I commend you for your being a good sport and participating as one of the models in that very nice event. Also, I should think it would be helpful to mention that Tuoliomi has been planning a major event at the Woodland Regional Park and Park Reserve this coming Saturday. They've now decided to postpone it in view of the fact that weather conditions are not expected to be good on Saturday. So if anybody had that on their calendar, they might want to scratch it off and stay alert to the reschedule. That's all I have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stollard. And Councilmember Garcia Cadena.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Saturday was certainly a busy day around Woodland. I wanted to thank our Boy and Girl Scouts in Woodland. They coordinated their annual Scouting for Food drive, which is extremely important. We have many people in our community who are vulnerable and dealing with food insecurity, and the turnout was just amazing. All the donations are directed to the Woodland Volunteer Food Closet and will be handed out directly to people in our community. And the report back is that this was the largest food drive that they've had in many, many years. So thank you to all the people in Woodland who contributed. This is definitely a sign of how caring our community is. And so that's a great thing. And then I just wanted to remind people that our Woodland Chamber of Commerce is holding their annual dinner back in person on the 25th of this month. And they have tickets available, and they will be recognizing Christy Wright, who will be retiring. She's been there for quite a few years. I think I read something like 31 years Christy's been with the chamber. So it's been quite a while, and she deserves some time off. That's it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Thank you, Mayor Vega. I just want to begin by mentioning the Read Across America to thank our public safety members who participated in the Read Across America. I had the pleasure of going out to Spring Lake Elementary this year and was able to read to Mr. Gomez's 5th grade class and Mr. Martinez's 6th grade class and Ms. Benedicto's TK. So I enjoyed my Read Across America visiting Spring Lake. Also want to mention Arbor Day, not only our community members that were there from preschool to high school and all our seniors, but our community service department, Christine Engel, who helped also organize that with Wesley. And so I just want to mention, thank them for their contribution to the Lions Club, for their volunteers and all the rest of the community members that our Councilmember Landsberg mentioned. Also, wanted to mention that we had the pleasure on March 9th, also through the Collaborative of Woodland Youth, to hear the Diversity and Equity Manager, Ami Barnes from the City of Sacramento, give a presentation. So grateful to the organization for providing us with that information. Also wanted to mention that we have a 10% discount coming up March 18th through the 20th through the Woodland Rec, for the Woodland Rec program. So thanks to our community service department again. There will be online registration with a 10% discount on March 18th through the 20th. Just a quick reminder on that. And there will be a groundbreaking coming up on March 23rd for the Woodland Community College Performing Arts and Culinary Facility, and that's scheduled for 4 o'clock on March 23rd. So that's exciting expansion of our campus here in Woodland. Also, like to congratulate our new superintendent, our official new superintendent for Woodland Joint Unified School District, Elodia Ortega Lampkin, who was officially appointed last Thursday by the Woodland Joint Board of Trustees. And lastly, March 31st, as we get ready to celebrate in the city of Woodland, the celebration of Cesar Chavez, just hope that we, as a city, look and reflect on how we are working to improve the quality of life for the members of our community who are farm workers. Thank you, Mayor Vega.
Thank Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Councilmember Stollard, I see your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I did forget one item. I wanted to alert my colleagues that I've asked the manager to take a look at the ordinance regarding council compensation. For the benefit of the public, the council is given a small stipend each month. It has been unchanged for over 20 years. California law does allow adjustment. I've asked the manager in consultation with the attorney to bring back an ordinance to us allowing an adjustment in council compensation. I would just bring it up because I want to be completely transparent with the community. I think that people need to realize this is essentially a half-time job on top of all the other jobs we all do. So anyway, that's what I'm working on. If any of you have concerns, I invite you to either address me personally, the first one at least, and then the rest can talk to the manager. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stollard. Well, and for myself, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, thank you so much for jotting all that down. You have it all down. So I hope to see a lot of our community members out to these events. They're exciting things. Definitely an opportunity to come together and celebrate some of the good things that are happening, especially after these challenging years that we've had. I won't go. I'd be repeating everything that everybody said here. So I just echo it and looking forward to seeing everybody out. All right, Mr. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Wanted to let you know that I had the privilege of attending yesterday at 10 a.m. at the Fire Station 3, the badge pinning for our 2 new community risk reduction specialists, Morgan Snedeker and Alyssa Kasubi. Just wanted to acknowledge and welcome to incredible department, incredible staff. We're fortunate to have them here, and they've got very talented shoes to fill, but looking forward to introducing them to you. Many of you already know Morgan. She came from the police department, but Alyssa is joining us from Yuba City. So yeah, look for them out and about. They'll be doing risk reduction and fire inspections, plan check and plan review. So more to follow on that. Other than that, I just wanted to touch on upcoming long-range calendar and celebrate collectively that this will be our last virtual council meeting. April 5th will mark the first time the council has been together in a special meeting together here in the chambers. And I've got a good agenda shaping up for that meeting. We will end with the spring budget workshop, but before that, we'll be providing an update to the council with a recommendation to engage a consultant for the second aquatic complex, the second pool. So we finished our interviews last week with 4 final selected consultants, and we're prepared to make a recommendation to the council to move forward with one of those firms. As part of that action, you will be presented with a new funding plan that outlines how we propose to fund the project. We will also be having a second public hearing on tonight's introduction of an ordinance for council district redistricting map. So depending on the outcome of that conversation, we're scheduled to have a second reading of that ordinance, which will position us to submit the final map to the county in time for the April 17th deadline. And then we're excited. I think we're going to be having a ceremonial presentation to honor the Pioneer Girls soccer team that competed and successfully won the state championship. So I wanted to honor not just their success this year, but actually In working with staff, I want to acknowledge all the success of the high school recreational and competitive sport teams this year. So we'll be inviting them to come and receive recognition. And then since we're going to be celebrating the district that night, we've invited the President Whitaker and new Superintendent Lampkin to come and present to the council the board's new adopted strategic goals. We will then reciprocate, and the mayor and I will present to the board at an upcoming meeting the new council goals that we will finalize this evening. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. And Councilmember Landsberg, I see your hand raised.
Yes, I had a question for the city manager. Seeing that Eric Zane took Morgan Snedeker from the police department, does he give up the next first round draft pick to the police department?
Yeah, with some financial consideration as well.
There better be. That's all I have.
Madam Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. All right, so now we're on to item F, the consent calendar. So it's items number 2 through 5 on our agenda. Do any of my colleagues have any items that they would like to remove for further discussion? No, not. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez?
Not remove, but just want to kind of note that again, the minutes for the Sustainability Advisory Committee, there's quite a bit of a delay by the time we receive it. And I just want to acknowledge that if we can work towards getting those in a more efficient, timely manner, I guess. And I want to thank them for taking the time to present those to the council.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. And Mr. City Manager, I think this issue's come up pretty routinely. Would you please work with the committee to see if there's a way to support them to maybe turn these around a little bit in a more timely manner?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had that conversation with staff, and we just made an offer last week, actually, for a new environmental services coordinator. So with that addition to that staff team, I'm confident we'll be able to turn the minutes around more expeditiously, and not just to the committee themselves, but to the council ultimately.
Wonderful. Thank you for that.
Madam Mayor, I had something,
okay.
not necessarily that I want to pull, but comment also on the Sustainability Advisory Committee. I wanted to acknowledge that Steve Burns, one of the members, he noted on here that there were goals in 2020 that were set for the Community Action Plan, and he's asking about more information on those goals and where that can be found. So I just want to make sure that we're working with them on this. They took the time to set these goals. I would like us to help with tracking and making sure that we're working to achieve the goals.
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Landsberg. Councilmember Landsberg.
I'm inquiring as to the reason that Jenna Moncrief is on standby. Is she here for the staff report regarding the lease at the park?
She is here if there are any questions for that, yes.
Well, I just want to acknowledge to Jenna and to your staff, Christine, and to the rest of the council. I've known Jenna since she was in kindergarten, my daughter. And here she is writing a staff report. Isn't that wonderful? What our education system does in Woodland and how we end up hiring such top-notch people like Jenna Moncrief. So thank you for your report, Jenna. Nice to see you.
I have to add that I think she started here when she was 14 or 15 as working at the pool, and then worked her way up and got a college degree and rose within the department. So we're really happy to have her on our team.
Yes. Thank you,
Yes,
Jen.
thank you both. Yeah, definitely homegrown here. So thank you.
That's wonderful. Councilmember Landsberg, thank you for pointing that out. It's a really wonderful to see homegrown.
Yep.
And Councilmember Landsberg, you just aged yourself a bit, you know?
There's no question about that.
Okay. And Mr. City Manager, just to loop back on Councilmember Garcia Cadina's comment about some of these action items. So is it safe to assume that the addition of the new staff member will help track and move some of these items along as they are brought up by the committee?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, what you're seeing here is due to a deficit in the staffing level, environmental services. And so we're excited to be able to bring back, actually, we're stealing somebody from Public Works back to environmental services to be a coordinator. So she'll be able to hit the ground running and support Rosie in the environmental services division. So yeah, appreciate the patience that the committee has had with us over the last year. But confident as we move forward, we will continue to make better progress, not just on the minutes, but their action plan and work plan, including providing an update to the council and the committee on where we stand relative to our greenhouse gas inventory. The committee has noted that we had 2020 targets and goals established within our climate action plan, and we're past due to present how we are trending relative to our progress towards those goals. And it's probably time to take a look at an update to the climate action plan as well. So a lot of work to do there, and we will be leaning a fair bit on the committee themselves to help us produce good product.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Okay, I don't see any other hands raised. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment?
No, no public comment.
Okay. all
Madam
right.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, motion on the table by Councilmember Landsberg.
Second by Fernandez.
Okay, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. So, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard,
Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you. Consent calendar carries 5-0.
Okay. All right, so now we're on to item G, which is a public hearing, and I have a note that it must begin at 6:30. So, Mr. Walsh, do we have to wait until 6:30?
You actually do for
Okay.
this item. So I don't know, Mr. Manager, if there's anything that we can take in between the start of the public hearing and this.
Yeah, it's probably not enough time for me to walk through the council goals update in 8 minutes, but I could try, or we could take a quick recess and resume at 6:30.
Motion to recess.
Let's take it. All right, do we have to take a motion or can we just take a recess for 7 minutes?
You can just take a recess if there's consensus on that.
Okay, all right. Let's take a recess. We'll see everybody back 6:30 sharp, okay? Okay, it's 6:30. See, we have. See everybody. Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, thank you. Mr. Walsh? Okay.
Yes, I'm here. I'm sorry. I undid my mute, but not my camera.
No, that's all right. Okay, so it's 6:30 and we'll now begin the public hearing for item number 6, redistricting map approval. So Mr. City Manager, you're going to start us off with a presentation?
I will. Yeah, and so tonight's public hearing is for the council to consider a proposed redistricting map that once adopted would redefine the 5 council district boundaries that we've been operating with for the last now 6 years. This process was initiated by the council the beginning of last summer in anticipation of the 2020 census results and data being available by the end of summer. And as part of that process, the council opted to go through a process to establish an independent advisory redistricting commission. And that commission's recommendation is before you this evening for consideration. First, let me start with a little bit of context around redistricting. Federal and state laws both provide some guidance as to not only the process, but some of the criteria and considerations that need to be factored in as communities consider redistricting. And every 10 years after the census is completed, districts that have district boundaries and district elections must go through a process prescribed by federal and state law to invite public comment, input, consider various alternatives to district boundary adjustments before ultimately taking action to adopt new boundaries. The council elected, as I mentioned, to establish an advisory redistricting commission. The commission members are listed here: Robert Simus, Mary Kimball, who's vice chair, Ann Davis East, David Moreno was appointed as the chair, and then Peggy Bernardi as well. So over the last 6+ months now, staff has been working very closely with the commission, and I do want to commend them for just the dedication and very thoughtful approach that they've taken throughout this process. Not once did they waver and get discouraged due to lack of input at moments, and really gave thoughtful input and consideration to all the factors that need to go into this process. David Moreno, the chair, is also with us this evening, and I've asked him to provide some comments as well upon conclusion of my remarks. So if you'll indulge him, he's available and would like to share some thoughts as well. Over the last 6-8 months, I think the commission has probably held over 20 meetings consisting of regular sort of committee meetings themselves or commission meetings, but also 6 community workshops, as well as 2 public hearings. They reviewed numerous maps, probably over 14 different map submissions that the community submitted for their consideration, as well as community of interest forms that they solicited through the internet, as well as at the public meetings themselves. They discussed various draft maps that were informed by these submissions from the public, and then ultimately at their last meeting made a recommendation on a final draft map that's before the City Council this evening for consideration. So this is the draft map that the commission has put forth for council consideration. And I want to highlight a couple of changes, because if you look at this side by side with the current council district maps, it's not always clear where the changes are, but I'll walk you through those here quickly. First of all, one of the primary challenges in this redistricting process is how to redistribute the population as equitably as possible across all 5 districts. District 5, as we all know, has received the most significant amount of population growth since the districts were established. So the challenge was how to redistribute the population imbalance from District 5 into the other districts while maintaining as much continuity with the district boundaries as possible, as well as some other criteria that I'll get into in a minute. So what I'll highlight here real quick are some of the areas where we took census tracts and blocks out of District 5 to help distribute that population increase. So this area right here shown in the circle is currently in District 5, and under the proposed map would take some of those blocks and put them into District 4. Similarly, this portion of District 5 extends up Pioneer and up to East Main Street. And so the map recommends that boundary be brought down and more in line with East Gum Street there. And then additionally, there's a portion of District 5 today that expands across East Street to the west, and the map proposes to take that current District 5 population area and distribute it into District 2. And then to help offset some of the population increase as a result of those changes onto District 4, the map proposes to take what is currently in District 4, shown here in this larger oval, and transfer it into District 3. The majority of that area is not populated with residences. However, there is the Yolano Donnelly neighborhood, which is probably the predominant residential population that you see show up in those numbers. And so the proposed map suggests that the line be for District 3 be shifted all the way to I-5 and follow 113 until it hits East Main Street and back up east. And then lastly, there is a small area that helps offset some of the population increase that would then transfer to District 3 into District 1 to distribute in a roundabout way some additional population into District 1, resulting in the distribution of population that you see in the 5 boxes, ranging from about 11,800 up to 12,800. So a range of about 1,000 differential across the districts. So this here shows some of the other considerations that were very important in the Commission's review and consideration of various maps. First, of course, was how does the total population get redistributed? There's a phrase here, the target deviation column, which the law specifically says that no more than 5% deviation may occur, meaning you can't gain any more than 5% or lose more than 5% population in any one district through redrawing of the boundaries. And so, as you can see from this column, the distribution maintains that criteria, and the specific numbers are shown there in the target deviation column to the left. The next column to the right shows affected population from current district. So what this shows is how many residents were moved from one district to another compared to the current district boundaries. And so naturally, as the challenge was, the majority of the population that gets shifted is from District 5, as is necessary. And then the majority of the other changes are in Districts 3 and 4, with Districts 1 and 2 being at the lower end and not needing to move any population out of their district. Did not see any specific census tract blocks moved out of their districts. And then the last column is percentage voting age Latino Hispanic. And this was an important consideration through all the conversations with the Commission, and that is to make sure that we don't end up with less than 2 districts with a majority Latino Hispanic voting population. Currently, if the population were to stay where they are in the current districts, there is 2 districts that would achieve that, and so they really wanted to hold true to that and ensure that 2 districts maintain that 50-plus Latino Hispanic voter age population. So you can see Districts 3 and District 4 both achieve that. All right. So tonight's hearing is to introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance that would implement the redistricting boundaries consistent with the map that's been presented by the Advisory Redistricting Commission. The first reading, as I mentioned earlier, will be followed by a second reading at the April 5th meeting. However, if the council so chooses this evening to seek additional consideration of refinements to either the map that the commission has put forth for council consideration, or if they would like to consider any of the other maps that were reviewed by the commission and have those brought back for council consideration before introducing the ordinance, the council can certainly do that. However, in order to achieve the timeline necessary for submitting the map in time for the April 17th deadline, the council will need to hold a special meeting before April 5th in order to avoid missing that deadline. So that concludes my staff presentation. Mayor, I will give it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Okay, Mr. David Moreno, welcome. Thank you for chairing. Would you like to address council now?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, council. Good evening. Thank you, Ken, for that breakdown. It was an absolute privilege to be a part of this advisory commission and an absolute pleasure to work with city staff, Ken, Anna, Danny, Jay, and Spencer, and everybody that worked, and Ethan, everybody else that worked in the back ends of this to make sure that it was possible. The commission's process did everything possible to make sure that input was gathered, and that meant that we held in-person workshops, and under the circumstances, also Zoom was utilized. We made sure that staff and commission members that were Spanish speakers, bilingual, were available to help with any resources and explanation of the history. You know, the process was really tricky in that we wanted to make sure that it was accessible to members of the public. So some webpage design was implemented. Some social media tactics and tools were designed by Spencer and city staff, and word of mouth by commissioners. When they weren't coming to us, we made sure that we went to them. So we made sure that public input was gathered. We were committed to preserving communities of interest, and that's why you had the amount of workshops that you had and the multiple opportunities for the public to join us. You know, as Ken mentioned, our goal was to keep at least two city districts at above a 50% Latino voting age population. And that was tricky because of the history and, you know, the way census tracts work. And so it was it was not, I want to say a challenge, but it was some work to do, and I'm happy and privileged to be a part of it. You know, I hope that council sees the work that everyone took to present this recommendation for you, and sees that we really tried to make it as simple and easy to take in for members of the public to see that the city districts were really just tweaked. You know, it's hard to do that, especially with such growth in this city. Everybody wants to be a part of the small town feel. I understand that. So I think that's all I have to say, but thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. I appreciate it. You and the rest of the commissioners' work and due diligence and this work, much appreciated. Okay, so I'll open it up for questions from my colleagues.
I have a question for Ken and or David. If we go back to the slide with the numbers. While she's looking for that, David, thank you for your work. Having been there, I know the work is involved. It's tedious, and juggling numbers is not something that's fun, but you did the right thing, so thank you for that. My question, David and Ken, is this. Knowing that District 5 is growing exponentially with development there, you have District 5 and having more population than any other 5 districts. Did you consider reducing that number and having them have a negative deviation for the time being, knowing that they're going to pick up numbers in the next couple of years?
Yeah, David, do you want me to take a stab at that? So absolutely, one of the main concerns, right, and anticipation of the growth in District 5 and the surrounding lands adjacent to that we anticipate annexing, in addition to the remaining growth in Spring Lake. The commission struggled actually pretty hard trying to figure out how to bring that number down. And I apologize, one of the other factors and criteria that the commission spent considerable time evaluating, and you'll see in your packet, there was actually several maps that looked at taking the Spring Lake, specific plan area and dividing it into 2 districts. That would make it a lot easier. Ultimately, the commission decided it was in the best interest of that community of interest to maintain a single district, particularly as it's building out and growing out. And so as we, looked at different options, what we started to see is you move more population out of Spring Lake. Either you're going to compromise the entire Spring Lake neighborhood being in a single district, or you begin to, dilute the voter population, particularly Latino Hispanic threshold in districts 3 and 4. And so they struggled trying to figure out how to balance that. And on totality of the assessment, what they concluded was it's best to sort of hold true to minimizing some of the disruption and ensuring as much continuity, I should say, for representation from current boundaries, ensure that at least those 2 districts maintain that majority Latino voting population, and that the deviations are maintained. And so it was acknowledged as one sort of criteria or objective that they wanted to achieve, but on the balance weren't willing to compromise the other positive outcomes.
Having said that, are we facing the inevitable then at some point?
Yeah, inevitable, right? After the next census, the council will go through a similar process and have to redistribute the population in the southeast area, and will likely at that time, Spring Lake will be built out, and you'll need to look at where to redraw the district boundaries for District 5, and we'll likely, bring District 5 down to Gibson or even further south, possibly move the population from District 2 across East Street into the area along Sports Park Drive and south of Gibson Avenue. So those are eventual changes. And again, one that the commission did consider at this time, but felt that it would be better to do that at a later date for the reasons that I already stated.
Okay. My last question is, looking at the same chart, the map, in District 5, they had about 2,800 people were affected. Am I to assume that those 2,800 people were absorbed in the other districts?
Correct. Yeah. So those 2,800 moved either to District 4 or to District 2. So they get reflected in these 3 areas right here.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Vega, and thank you to the Advisory Redistricting Commission for their work and all their endeavors to have community input. And I realized it was difficult to get that input. And I would like to agree with Council Member Landsberg. I've addressed this to City Manager Ken Hyatt, that we need to think about the future of our community, and that the proposed map limits the growth that, or it doesn't foresee the future growth in, accommodate for the future growth in District 5. So I have a concern regarding the map that is proposed, because it is at the top of the 5 percentage point deviation. So it's at 4.9, limiting the amount of growth that is accommodating for District 5. I also want to just make note that in the ordinance itself, it states drawing easily defined identifiable districts through use of natural or artificial boundaries which is again one of my concerns about the boundaries as drawn in the proposed map. And then compactness of territory in districts. So again, looking at how District 4 and 5 and District 3 have lost that compactness. I think Districts 1 and 2 in the proposed map have that compactness, have that identifiable boundaries with identifiable main thoroughfares that provide for community members to be able to identify their districts clearly. Again, in the proposed map of, we have the lines that are not clearly definable in District 4 and 5. We have them coming in and out. Again, just have issues with some of the boundary lines. And I understand that you have tried different manners. I'd like to look at, if possible, there's a submission of a map 11, which has a little more clearly defined boundary lines. It accommodates for growth in District 5. It has a target deviation of minus 3.5% for District 5, a 3.8% deviation for District 4. So just kind of looking ahead and looking for the future of our community so that we don't have to look at the community in District 5 being as large as it's going to continue to, as it continues to grow. And I think we're going to have that issue again because we have the majority of growth in District 5. So I would like to look at, have another option besides the one that's proposed if possible. I just would like that discussion to occur if possible at some point. Thank you, Mayor Vega.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Any other comments or questions?
Well, let me jump in where Councilmember Fernandez dropped off. And that's a question for David. David, looking at map 11, were you able to still maintain the 2 districts with 50% plus for Latinos?
Is it possible to get that map up in our screens?
It's at 51.2% for District 4, 52.5% for Latino Hispanic voting age voters. 40.4.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm working on getting the map up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for pulling the map up, Madam Clerk. I appreciate it. I'm looking at it, but I can't.
That was 11, right?
Yes.
Okay.
While the map is being pulled up, I can mention one of the concerns that Councilmember Vicky Fernandez brought up about the lines. And one thing that even the commission had to learn is that the lines aren't set by what we want them to be. They're based off of the census tracts. And so specifically talking about the northwest boundary of District 3 and District 1, see, that area was kind of tricky because if we were to change it in any other way, it kind of, lack of a better word, it started to look like if it were part of gerrymandering. You know, it'd be in such a census tract that it's not a clear line straight, that like if we wanted to go through just a straight through line, straight through street for a boundary. So we have to work with the census tracts. That was the issue. This community submission of map number 11 was one of the ones that we brought up, and it did accomplish the above majority of Latino voting age population. However, the commission did feel like we didn't want to get the council tied in with too many of the details in some of these maps, because we were able to accomplish the deviation, but they are part of the agenda packets that we were able to provide to council. And you know, at the time of us having our meetings and considering that District 5 was going to grow, we wanted to make sure that, as Ken mentioned, that this was a community that was still growing, and splitting it into felt like it was, separating that community of interest. I apologize for not having, more in detail answers, but those concerns were brought up in our discussion. But as you have here, a lot of these submissions are available to council, and they're up for discussion for your consideration as well. We were just trying to work with the deadline that we had, and as well with the input that was provided. Ken, if you feel like I've missed anything, please feel free to add on there.
Yeah, I would just add that I think one of the main factors that caused the commission to try to look at alternatives to this submission was the objective of keeping all of Spring Lake specific plan area in the same district. And so the area east of East Street there over to 113 and south of Gibson, there's a portion of that that's part of the Spring Lake neighborhood. The Community and Senior Center, of course, is something that the Spring Lake residents, contribute to and feel was appropriate to be part of their district through the build out. So I think that was the primary concern that I heard from the commission with respect to this alternative. But it certainly does create some straighter lines that follow more major arterial roadways. I guess I would just offer that the commission's recommended map, while it still has, some, lack of a better phrase, squealier lines between districts 4 and 5, they are certainly, I would argue, not any worse than currently exists and have served the council fairly well over the last 6 years. So I think the commission did recognize that they weren't making it worse by drawing those boundaries and actually, in some respects, improving that aspect. So.
To chime in just about the keeping Spring Lake specific plan together. Certainly from the feedback that I've heard from the community, right, there's a huge sense of ownership of the sports park, right? I mean, just the fact that Spring Lake community members contribute to parts of it. And it's really one of the community's parks, right, as designated in the Spring Lake specific plan. So just throwing that out there, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, I hear you. The lines, the not lack of straight lines causes me to pause, and additionally the planned growth. But just having seen the community, Spring Lake community, come out and speak out around their interest, I would really like to see that plan stay, that specific plan area stay together as a community of interest. Councilmember Stollard?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to comment, but I prefer to wait till after we have the public hearing so that I have the benefit of anything the public may wish to say. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. And any other comments? Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, sorry, I would think we cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just want to make note of the squiggly lines that I have an issue with. The last 6 years they've been there because they were adopted in 2014 as part of the districting process. But I think for community members, it's always clear to have a clearly defined boundary line. And I think that it's stated in the process. So I think we're doing with what we have, but I don't think that it is easier for community members to look at the map as it was or is, and saying that not changing it would not hurt anyone. I think it just advocating for clearer defined boundary lines for the community of District 4. And I understand that the Southeast area and Spring Lake District takes ownership of the community park area, and I realize that it's part of it, but I don't know that dividing the city into 5 districts doesn't mean that we're not inclusive of all being members of the city of Woodland. So whether it's in District 4, District 3, or 1, we're all still part of Woodland. And so I'm just looking for an alternative discussion, I guess, than the current proposed map, and for a review of other possibilities. So whether it's district as it is offered, or whether we can have a discussion about having some alterations to the map as proposed. So whether it's not district submission 11, whether it's the one exhibit A that we have, but to look at having a discussion about just clearer boundary lines and keeping the communities of interest in mind and all the other factors that have been discussed. So that's my just thought and recommendation for. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Councilmember Garcia Cadena, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Fernandez bringing this up. I agree that it does cause confusion for people when there seems to be little cutout areas, and 2 blocks away, someone else is in a different district, and they're not, they don't quite understand how that works. And so I can appreciate the straight lines and using our major arterial roads. But I do want to thank the commission for all their work on this. This is amazing. I'm interested to hear what our community has to say about it.
All right, Councilmember Garcia Cadena, thank you. So with that said, I think we can move on to public comment.
Madam Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Following up on what Councilmember Fernandez said, we're all in the same, this is our one city. We have one city. Whether we live in the northwest corner of the southwest corner of the town, southeast corner, it doesn't matter. We're Woodlanders. And the community of interest is Woodland. We all are in this together. As long as we are in compliance with the law, I'm in agreement that the line should be a little more defined. And so the question I have for David and for Ken is, are any of the criteria that are mentioned in the statute more important or given more weight than the other?
I'll give a stab at that. I don't think that one gives more weight at the other. I think that the commission itself did try to accomplish keeping some of the communities of interest, just because that was the input that was being heard. And I do want to also mention that this is, and Ethan and Ken can confirm this, that this is not the end all game. This is only a recommendation, and council can tweak this to whatever boundary line that they want. And right now, I really wish that our motto, at one point it was 5 districts, 1 community, and it's 100% that, in the commission, it wasn't a dividing as to which district owns this. It was also just trying to address some of the things that Councilmember Garcia Cadena mentioned as to, when district boundaries are laid out, it's difficult to, tell a community that have been neighbors for years that, oh, you're not in the same district. And, sometimes it's hard to accomplish that given the census tracts that are presented as well as the deviations that we're trying to accomplish. But that's what I wanted to mention there, that we weren't specifically weighing on one thing over the other, but we were trying to accomplish keeping the communities of interest, and specifically the percentage of Latino voting age population to our goal. Yeah.
And I would just add, I think, the primary objective, right, is to provide equal distribution of population as much as possible, and within, the 5% deviation threshold. And in doing that, right, need to be very conscious and thoughtful about not segregating communities of interest that exist. And so at the end, the primary objective is that population distribution, but doing so in a way that does not intentionally or unintentionally, divide communities of interest. So that's the struggle that the commission went through for the last 6 months is, how do you do that? And certainly one of the factors around Spring Lake that was discussed was, they are still growing out. They're the probably the most heavily taxed, residential neighborhood in Spring Lake with the assessments that they have. And so I think that was weighing on the commission, trying to figure out how to not take that, particularly that portion of Spring Lake that's on the west side of 113 that may already feel that they're not, part of Spring Lake and separate things. So, so I think, those are the primary reasons. And Ethan, if there's any criteria that have different weights, I'm certainly not aware of it, but please weigh in.
I would just say, the criteria that does have the most weight is to ensure the equal distribution of the population. If we didn't do that, then the map wouldn't be permissible. And then secondly, I think making sure that we're being sensitive to communities of interest and especially to our Latino population is the key thing that we have to consider. I think both these maps meet those criteria. And then beyond that, it's kind of a balancing act between all the various criteria and trying to ensure that you meet the spirit of the law as best you can. So as long as you're meeting those first two, then I think there's some level of discretion as to how you implement it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Okay, so I think let's go ahead and hear what the public's input is for tonight on this item. Madam Clerk, do you have any public comment?
No public comment, and nobody is raising their hand.
Isn't this a public hearing? It's not the same as public comment. It's a public hearing.
Yes, Mayor, we need to open the public hearing.
Okay.
And then see.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I will open the public hearing for item number 6, the Bree District map approval at 7:07 p.m. Okay, and there's no one, Madam Clerk, calling in, no one called in, no one raising their hand.
Right, and no emails.
And no emails. Okay, all right, so we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Okay, did I do all that, complete that process correctly? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Stellar, I see your hands raised.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, colleagues, for your sharing. I always like to hear from the public if they have something to say, especially in a public hearing. We now know that there's nobody here to have any say. And I know it's been a bit discouraging for our commission to have less response than they might have hoped. But I think this fact reflects the reality that this whole process is a fairly artificial process. Now, it has to be done according to the requirements of law. And I want to thank you, David, and I want to thank your colleagues for the sweat you have put into this. It's been many, many evenings you've given up and weekends to do this. So thank you. And you have met the requirements of the law in both your recommendation and also I think the map that Vicky prefers also meets those same criteria. So then it's a matter of for the council to go with. For myself, I can live with either of these maps. I think we need to accept the reality that if you were interviewing the people of Woodland today, I'd be surprised if 1 out of 10 could identify their council district. I doubt that more than 1 out of 10 cares about their council district. There are activists in our community that do care, but they're relatively few. And I do think it's important, and we worried about this back when we had to go to districts under the California Voting Rights Act. We worried that it would balkanize our community and that people who represented specific neighborhoods would prefer their interests over that of the rest of the community. Thankfully, that has not been the case. We operate as one community, 5 of us. We don't bring up my district all the time. And I'm really grateful for that. And I expect that to continue in the future. So I think this is a render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's type of activity. We have to meet the requirements of law and then move on and do business just like we've been doing it up till now. So I will accept the committee's recommendation or the alternative, and I think we'll go forward and be done with this process. But I want to again say thank you. It took a lot of time and effort, and I'm sure it was interesting, but it was also grueling. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stoller. I'll just share something that happened over the weekend. I had somebody who had reached out to me regarding some issues they were having in their alley, and they were resolved thanks to the staff and code enforcement. And then the woman said, "Is that your district?" And I said, "Well, it doesn't matter." She says, "No, but is it your district?" And I said, "No, it's not." But she's, "Oh, okay. Well, then again, that's just an example of people don't necessarily know, and ultimately they have issues resolved. And I think that's just the beauty of how well we work together in this community, right? I mean, those lines aren't going to define what we do if something needs to be advocated for. And I've certainly seen that when issues have come up on the southeast part of town. All of you colleagues have listened to those concerns. So I trust that where these lines would fall, the truly what the community is going to see and the advocacy that we'll do will continue regardless of where these lines. So at this point, so we have now we're ready to make a motion? Is that what yes?
So what we have on I think just to explain the options that I think we have in front of us is we have the ordinance in front of us with an attached map. If we were to, basically if you wanted to substitute out the map for the alternative map, I think you could still introduce the ordinance with the replacement of the alternative map. It's in the same format and everything. Or as Ken noted, you could continue this item to a later date so that we could discuss it, or you could discuss it further if you like. But we would have to do that before the April 5th meeting because of our deadline, and we have to have a first and second reading, whatever ordinance we decide on. So the alternatives are staff recommendation and the committee's recommendation, or alternatively introduce the ordinance with the substitute map or continue it to a certain date.
Okay, thank you for that recap, Ms. Walsh. Colleagues, anybody jumping out?
I just have a quick question for clarification, Mayor Vega. I know that our numbers include total voting age, Hispanic, Latino, but voting age doesn't necessarily mean voters, right? We don't take in consideration how many people are actually voting in the city of Woodland when we're doing redistricting.
Right.
That's not a consideration.
If that was the case, Stoller and I would have the largest districts.
And we would always hold the mayoral position too. If it was on the top basis of top vote or get out. So that's why
turnout. So
we're
okay.
fair.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Right,
I just wanted to clarify that just because there may be a higher percentage of Latino or Hispanic voters doesn't necessarily mean that that's the turnout as well. So okay.
Although look at our council, so 4 or 5, I think we're doing pretty good.
Well, I'm gonna maybe look for clarification or ask for further discussion on the proposed map. Can I make that request? So that would be making a motion to continue with another meeting. Is that correct?
Yeah,
I think we're running out of time, Councilmember Fernandez. We don't have a lot of time left. This is our last meeting until April. You made a recommendation. I'm willing to support your recommendation if you make the motion, which would be to adopt the ordinance and look at map 11.
Okay.
Alternative.
Clarify to substitute the attached exhibit with the community submission 11 map,
Yeah.
not to look at it and come back at another meeting.
Yeah. I'm looking for clarification. If we look at what we have proposed and make deviations or changes to that, we would need another special meeting. If we propose to substitute it, I can make a motion asking for the submission 11, correct? And not have another meeting.
You could make that motion right now and consider that. And I think that's what Council Member Landsberg was saying he would support.
So I make a motion then to request submission of map 11 for consideration as the redistricting advisory commission substitution. And then making a motion to look at map 11 as the proposed redistricting maps for the city of Woodland.
Okay, so let me give a stab at summarizing, right? Just so it's the motion, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, is to introduce and waive the first reading of the ordinance of the City Council of City of Woodland regarding the by-district elections, adjusting the boundaries of City Council election districts and confirming such revised council district boundaries as reflected in the in map 11. Right?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's the motion.
Yes.
Okay. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez. Do we have a second? Councilmember Landsberg, is that?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez, second by Councilmember Landsberg. Madam Clerk.
Mayor Vega,
Oh, yes.
I would respectfully offer a substitute motion to accept the recommendation of their Citizens Advisory Committee to approve the map that they've recommended to us.
Okay. All right. So we have the substitute motion. So in this case, I need some guidance. Mr. Walsh, how
You
do
have
we?
to have a second or I have no motion.
Right, so you would see if there is a second to Councilmember Stollard's motion.
Okay. Do we have a second? No second, Councilmember Stollard.
No worries. I was a gesture in support of their efforts, but I'm happy to proceed with the underlying motion.
Okay, thank you so much.
Councilmember Stoller, I take nothing away from the commission's work. They've done an outstanding job considering what they had to go through, COVID conditions, a lack of response. I commend them for what they've done. Absolutely commend them. Take nothing away from their work.
Okay, thank you, Councilmembers. Okay, all right, so now would call the vote?
Yes, for the substitute motion. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez?
So, and just to be clear, it's not on the substitute motion because that died for lack of a second. It's on the original motion.
It's on the original motion.
Okay, yes, thank you. With map 11. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
The
Mayor-
seconder of the original motion was Councilmember Landsberg.
Yes.
No, the original motion was Fernandez. I seconded it.
Right. Yeah, I was looking for who seconded. I lost track of who seconded it. So just want to make sure we had a second.
Okay, I'll do the roll call vote. Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez?
With reservations, aye.
Okay, Councilmember Garcia Cadena?
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg?
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard?
Aye.
Mayor Vega?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for the discussion. I appreciate it. And Mr. David, thank you so much for all the work and all of the commissioners. We so greatly appreciate it. This is definitely what I imagined and the spirit of having you all participate in engaging the community with this. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I truly appreciate staff's assistance and help in answering all the questions at all times. So thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to item H.
All right. Yeah, Mayor Vega, if I may proceed. So item H is consideration of updates to the City Council's priority goals and strategic action plan. As you recall, about this time a year ago, you adopted a 2-year set of priority goals and strategic actions, and that was preceded by a very engaging and robust retreat that the council held together to really take a fresh look at the City Council's goals that had been operating with for the prior 10 years. And through that effort, really narrowed down the framework for the priority goals and strategic actions and got much more disciplined, I would say, with respect to some of the strategic actions that showed up in the articulated action plan. And so what you see here is just a summary slide. So the council adopted 4 key goal areas that we'll talk about in a minute: improve quality of life, focusing on economic development in downtown, strengthening public safety and infrastructure, and doing so while enhancing governance and fiscal responsibility. And so everything that we continue to operate and prioritize in terms of implementations and policies and programs sort of fall and nest under one of these 4 goal areas. At the City Council retreat this year, Council spent the entire day, considering where it wanted to refine its goal areas, identify potential new initiatives, and then as part of that process, invited in various commissions, advisory bodies to get to know the council, share their perspectives on where they felt the priorities for their respective commissions and advisory bodies were, and how those align with the council goals. We also sought input from youth in the community and wanted to hear their voice carried through and with respect to existing and future initiatives that the council should be considering. And so we took that feedback and asked the council as well to identify its top priority initiatives. So we took a look at the priorities that you established last year, and we've asked you to really identify of those priorities and initiatives for the next 12 months that we have to operate under these goals. If we were to accomplish nothing else, what do you absolutely want to make sure we achieve? And so what I've attempted to do here is outline your goals and strategies in a framework that identifies now priority initiatives. And so that's this first category that you see here, followed by continuing initiatives. So this takes simply the initiatives that you had last year articulated, add some new ones, that's the blue text, identifies by color coding bullet points there, how we're tracking relative to advancing these initiatives, and then certainly identifies and does not give up on the other priorities that you had outlined in your 2-year goals. And so starting real quick with quality of life, the council, when asked, highlighted these 6 key initiatives that you wanted to see accomplished this year. Formalize and expand volunteer internship programs, make sure that second pool complex moves forward. You wanted to see us conduct a comprehensive assessment of programs and services and develop strategies to promote engagement from all segments of the community. Wanted us to elevate sustainability and climate resiliency efforts. Those 2 right there that I just mentioned were the 2 new ones the council wanted to see added to its goals. Evaluate different models to deliver impactful and inclusive programming to the entire community, and then creating and promoting additional multicultural events. And so these, with council's concurrence this evening, will be the sort of the top initiatives that we make sure that we advance week in and week out and make progress on, but also I'll maintain while also carrying through these additional priority initiatives. And I'll not go through those again because you know those quite well, but we will not abandon these as well. We'll continue to advance them. Moving on to economic development in downtown. No new priority initiatives here, but a focus around identifying key workforce development needs, establishing workforce development initiatives in support of our local economy and the businesses that we have here. And then implementing, again, marketing events and promotions that drive increased business activity, particularly around hotel stays and external visitation, which brings new revenues into the community. Moving on to public safety and infrastructure, new priority initiative was identified by the council to expand law enforcement patrol capacity and resources. That is a request specifically to look at adding additional patrol officers in the context of the budget this year, but also, and almost more importantly, continue to work with the police department and police chief to evaluate the responsibilities and duties of our patrol personnel and make sure that we're using their time most effectively and efficiently, and where we can offload some of the responsibilities to preferably non-sworn staff, continue to work on that to free up their ability to be on the street responding to incidences. Secondly, educate public on flood risks and the importance of flood protection. This is going to be of utmost importance as we move into the implementation phase of the flood control project, begin to define more specifically what that project's going to look like, how we're going to finance it, and why it is so important to those that are impacted currently by the flood project. But also, since the majority of that floodplain consists of our employment base in this town, as well as some disadvantaged communities, the need to ensure protection of those areas for the entire community's benefit. Thirdly, expand volunteer and neighborhood watch programs. That continues to be a very high interest theme for the council to continue to connect with residents at the block level and continue to support their interest to connect together and do so in a way that strengthens their neighborhoods and the overall community. And then fourthly, invest in community-based gun violence reduction programs. So the council made a tremendous step last year in investing in the Advanced Peace Program, which is already proving to bear fruit, and wanted us to continue to explore additional investments towards that objective. And then lastly, fiscal responsibility and governance. New initiative identified through the retreat process was assessing staff recruitment, retention, training, and data collection with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So this is the inward focusing portion of ensuring that we are more diverse and equitable in our staffing throughout the organization, and ultimately reflective of the demographic of our community. So the council is strong in saying that we need to make advancements towards this objective, and we will continue to make those improvements, and looking forward in May to present to the council the external assessment that's being conducted by the graduate students at UC Berkeley. Secondly, comprehensive evaluation of existing communication efforts, partnering with the communications team here at the city to build a robust framework that allows us to engage in proactive communication in the community, and be less reactive to misinformation or disinformation. And then thirdly, maintain a balanced budget while strategically investing in projects and programs that yield fiscal, social, and environmental benefits. So the triple bottom line, let's make sure that everything we do has as many multiple benefits as possible. And so that concludes my presentation. I welcome the council's feedback on these. Again, with the council's concurrence this evening, we will amend these new goals. We'll put them up on the website and continue to operate with these as a priority focus at the staff level and as we engage with the community.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Great job taking all of the feedback that we provided during our retreat and summarizing it. Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see, do we have any comments or questions from my colleagues?
I'd just like to also say thank you to Ken. It's a lot of work to process this information and to make it sensible. And I think the presentation is really very well done. Thank you, Ken, and thank you to your colleagues.
Thank you. My pleasure.
It was great to have your department heads with us that morning too.
Yeah, and I'm going to interject here. I failed to mention, I went through a similar exercise with our department heads, asking them to prioritize each of the goal areas. And certainly a lot of similarities to what we heard from the council. And I did not divulge to them, nor unless they could remember or took pictures, where the council's priorities lied. But a lot of similarities, but surprising to me, across the board, a real desire and focus was coming through from department heads on how we can help build back our community around economic development initiatives, events, and community, engagement. So, appreciate their feedback and their dedication, commitment to not just advancing the council goals, but doing so in a way with an eye towards our entire community.
Oh, Mayor Vega, I also wanted to thank City Manager Ken Hyatt. The way that this is organized, I think makes it very clear and easy for our community to understand. Hey, Kitty. Easy for our community members to see where our priorities are and understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. And so I really appreciate the way that it's laid out and presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Councilmember Stollard, can you introduce her again?
Teddy wants to know he doesn't care what council district he's in.
Good, at least we got some community input there. Oh no, he's frozen.
He's kind of a cat. He'll visit 2 or 3 council districts in a night.
In a night, there we go.
Tonight is not about animal services. That's going to be in April, Tom.
That's going to be, that's for next month. Okay.
Comment, Madam Mayor, and it's very well condensed what we did, the full day. So appreciate the efforts, Ken, and I too wanted to thank your staff for being present, because they need to hear from us as well as to where we're headed, and I'm glad that they're on the same page. Sounds good.
Okay, so I think, so now as far as action, so it's the motion to accept the staff recommendation for the proposed updates to the priority goals. Oh, yes.
Excuse me, someone is raising their hand.
Okay, I can't see them, but okay. Is it for public comment?
Christine?
Okay.
Christine?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So thank you. So my name is Christine Shoemaker, and I wanted to take the opportunity to thank staff for the inclusion or re-inclusion of climate change in the goals. This should be both mitigation, which is reduction in greenhouse gases, and resiliencies to the impact. I'm one of those that commented to the council the last time in September of 2021 when the goals were reviewed by the council on its absence. So I'm happy to see that. And I know that there were lots of others in the discussion at the retreat that happened as well. And I just want to mention that on the 28th of February this year, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, released its latest report highlighting the causes, impacts, and possible solutions to climate change. And the findings in the report show that the climate breakdown is happening faster than expected and that the window to take action is closing fast. And I'm going to give a short quote here from the chair of the IPCC. And he said, quote, "The report is a dire warning about the consequences of inaction. It shows that climate change is a grave and mounting threat to our well-being and a healthy planet. And our actions today will shape how people adapt and nature responds to increasing climate risks," unquote. So thank you again for including it. And I'm looking forward to the increased focus and to further information and actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shoemaker. Appreciate you being here tonight and your input.
And we have another hand raised. Manuel, can you hear me, Mr. Candela?
Mr. Candela, you're on mute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please proceed.
Well, I just resuming just one question. Where are you guys open the meeting to the public and not hiding in Zoom? I follow the Zoom for almost the last 2 years, this council Zoom and the transportation district. And like I told the other day to Mrs. Gonzalez, I seen everything. Besides, there's no public discussion. I seen the informality of those meetings. People eating dinner. I seen drinking a beer, taking the pet, talking with other people. And I really hope you guys open again the meetings to the public. You guys cannot be hiding now. There's no even a little excuse. You can go to Santa Ana and watch a game with 70,000 people. So are you gonna keep doing that forever? That's it. I'm not expecting any question because any answer, because for almost 5 years, you guys don't answer and you don't care for anything. And I can tell you that when we have the other day a meeting with the city manager exposing this last problem, the same for 5 years, who's not even addressed. I'm gonna die one day in industrial because there's no soldier to go to the bus stop. We exposed to him a totally plan and he refused. And you guys refuse and you don't care. I hope to see you guys open again city meetings to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Candela. Ana, any other
No,
comments?
nothing, no.
Okay. All right, so just to get back to this item, again, to resume the action required of us or asked of us is to accept staff recommendation for the updates on the priority goals and strategic actions as outlined in the staff report.
Stallard will move the acceptance of the staff report.
Okay, wonderful.
I will second.
Okay, wonderful. Moved by Councilmember Stallard and seconded by Councilmember Garcia Cadena. Okay, no further discussion? Okay, all right. Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Thank you. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Fernandez,
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia Cadena,
Aye.
Councilmember Landsberg,
Aye.
Councilmember Stallard,
Aye.
Mayor Vega.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, great. All right, so now we're on to item 8, the American Rescue Plan update. So Mr. Hyatt.
Yeah, I apologize. You're going to have to listen to me on this one as well, as Ms. McKinney is traveling at a conference this evening, but I'll do my best to walk you through the updated framework for the American Rescue Plan funding. Real quick overview. Again, the city is due to receive approximately $11.1 million in 2 equal payments. We received the first one last June. Anticipate receiving the second disbursement, $5.5 million this June. The funds must be committed on or before December 31st of 2024, and then expended by the same date in 2026. The Department of Treasury outlines how the funds can be used, and we've used that guidance by the Treasury, and the council provided further refinement and guidance through the early phases of its input process, both working with the council subcommittee of Mayor Vega and Councilmember Stallard to develop a prioritization of use of those funds. So what you see listed here revenue recovery, response to public health emergency, the negative effects, economic effects of COVID, youth services and childcare, and infrastructure investments were the 5 key categories that the council gave direction to staff last fall to focus the continued framework of funding allocation. One bit of new information that has been now released since January of this year, the Treasury did issue its final rule. And really the only substantive change that came from that relative to our framework was the provision for a standard allowance of 10 million in revenue loss to be claimed, whereas previously there was a complicated formula and we had to submit for evidence of revenue loss to the Department of Treasury, get that approved, and then if approved, that funding would fall under a different set of criteria and reporting requirements. So with this new rule, the 10 million standard allowance, staff is recommending that we proceed with claiming that allowance, freeing up the majority of the ARP funds and significantly reducing our administrative burden as we move forward. And so as part of that, there's also some greater flexibility relative to the Treasury's guidance on how those funds can be used, but we're still recommending that the Council's prioritization of use of funds that you see here be our guide as we move forward with funding allocation. So further refinement in working with the subcommittee and now with a little bit more flexibility, we've been able to release ourselves from some strict terminology that the Treasury was using. What we've proposed now is that these 5 key categories be titled as such. So critical services, public health and safety, economic assistance and housing, youth services, childcare and community building, and then infrastructure and sustainability. And how that plays out with the proposed funding allocation that's attached to your staff report is here. So at the first level of detail, what you see is a 5-year, 4-year spending plan that allocates the entire 11.1 million across these categories and does so in a way that does not expose us should the federal government not release a second allocation this June. So we're not leaning too far forward, but it still provides for a thoughtful and intentional allocation of all the funds consistent with the deadlines that are prescribed. So I'm going to walk through specific funding recommendations that are outlined in the staff report, again, in the funding plan by each category. Critical services, public health and safety, all told, the funding plan before you proposes to invest $3 million, a little bit more than that, towards these 5 categories. The Crisis Now pilot program, which the council has previously committed to be a funding partner with the other cities as well as Yolo County to stand up a Crisis Now pilot program. Our request or proposal to the city was to request $990,000 go towards that funding partnership to stand up this program and launch it for the first 3 years. The ultimate plan would be that the Crisis Now pilot program would become permanent and then be permanently funded without reliance on city resources. We will continue to retain our co-responders that are included in our current budget. We currently have 1 funded in our general fund budget. We announced recently the award of a grant that would allow us to fund for another year a second co-responder. So we will continue to operate with those and see how the new pilot program evolves over time. Cybersecurity and network resiliency. This is becoming more and more important. And you've seen the headlines where cities have been attacked virtually and they're held hostage, their data. So we've talked with our IT folks who do a great job staying on top of this, but there is some additional investment that they recommend to protect our servers and our community data that we hold in our networks from being attacked. And so the $130,000 would allow that new investment to protect our network servers. Also identified an online permit streamlining line item. So this is an ongoing need, particularly in the community development department, where our permitting process, while we're transitioning, is still somewhat antiquated and relies a lot on multiple staff members to engage in what could be a very streamlined process that in real time, not only can staff, but the public can see where applications for building permits or planning permits are in the process. So it helps provide better public information, internal efficiencies with staffing, and then also reduces our paper consumption and therefore storage needs in the community. So important investment that just has not had an opportunity for one-time investment to do this. And so we're recommending $225,000 from ARP to help with that. The Healthy YOLO Together testing program is now winding down. The council authorized entering into up to $150,000 for the Norton Hall testing platform, which was critical for us to get through the wave over the holidays in early 2022. So that program will be coming to a close. There might be a little extra funding needed to wind down that program, but anticipate it being pretty close to the $150,000 identified here. And then public safety infrastructure, one of the largest line items here, $1.5 million. The police department has indicated that the body-worn camera technology that they have was being phased out by their current service provider. And there's a need to invest in body-worn cameras for the entire department, as well as the in-car and in-station integrated support system. And so majority of that 1.5 million will go towards body-worn camera technology that is required for us to invest in regardless of this funding from ARP. The other portion of that funding will go towards preemption detection for emergency response vehicles, so fire response, allowing some of our congested corridors to get freed up and improve our emergency response for fire apparatus to code 1, 2, and 3 calls. Moving on to economic assistance and housing, 1.225 million total allocation here for specific line items. Restaurants, particularly the restaurants in downtown, were able to access CARES Act funding for providing outdoor seating as they were closed to indoor dining. Now that they're back indoors and through the experience of using parklets, they found that these are essential and customers actually choose to go to the restaurants due to the opportunity for outdoor seating. So we're working with the restaurants that have outdoor seating that they implemented during COVID and working to provide enhancements and in some cases slightly scale back some of those parklets. But we want to do so in a way that as we transition and we consider these to be permanent, that we do so in a way that's attractive and enhances even further the downtown environment. And so in talking with the restaurants, they obviously are still continuing to suffer economically. Our recommendation is that we help invest in those modifications to allow them to take advantage of the expanded seating, but doing so in a way that enhances the downtown. Second line item is business recovery, $150,000. This is still a funding that is in need of refined detail as to how this money will be invested. But the subcommittee discussed a couple good ideas where we could partner with our small business community and identify particularly as most impacted small businesses that maybe are still struggling economically to make the investments to transition to a new way of doing business, more online platform and marketing and business operations. And so we'll be exploring with small businesses how we can best utilize $150,000 to support them and make them more economically resilient moving forward. Third line item is a housing project. The Housing Authority owns the Yolano Donnelly property, and they are advancing a reinvestment strategy to provide not just additional housing, but also replace the housing that's there with new units as the The units that are currently occupied are in need of upgrade and reinvestment. And so the county has already identified desire to match the city up to $1 million towards supporting the Housing Authority's interest in infill housing and replacement of housing there. This $500,000 ARP recommendation would be accompanied by some additional funding from our Housing Trust Fund and with the match from the SACOG REAP grant that we recently received, roughly $50,000. So the recommendation is to match the county's $1 million commitment towards the project. And we'll bring forward more details and a specific funding request when the timing is right. And then lastly, workforce training internship program for the city. Again, as the council goals identify, there's a desire to continue to support community members upskilling and getting access to training programs that allow them to take advantage of the career opportunities that are open with businesses in the community. That is a very sort of complicated and messy space for cities to typically get involved in. Largely community colleges and community workforce training programs are conducted by the county Workforce Investment Board. But seeing a void and a need for us to play maybe a facilitator role in helping bring some focus around where to target some of these training programs. And then secondarily, and one that I'm more excited about, also kind of in advancement of the council goals that you just refined, is starting a city internship program where annually we'll allocate $150,000 across the organization to provide internships for young adults that are interested in getting exposure and specifically workforce experience in civic leadership and local government. So our proposal is to take some of this funding to invest towards our youth and getting our youth exposed towards civic work. All right, moving on to the youth services child care category, just shy of $3 million proposed to be allocated in this category. First project here is well known. The Boys and Girls Club of America is moving forward with improvements to the former Cross Court Fitness Club. They have requested funding in support of their operations to allow them to stabilize and become self-sustaining. The proposal is to allocate $300,000 in year one, followed by 2 additional years of $200,000 each, and to have the county match that funding commitment as part of the project. And so the County Board of Supervisors is scheduled to take up this funding request at their first or second meeting in April. We will be bringing forward a funding agreement to the council on April 5th. That would commit this funding towards that project. And the project is, I think, as you know, is on schedule to be open by September of this year. And so excited to be able to bring that asset and that resource to the youth in our community. The second project was another one that we heard and continue to hear consistently, is the need for access to childcare facilities. So we've been approached by a nonprofit organization that is in contract to acquire the former Montessori daycare center on Cottonwood. Their proposal is to seek funding to help them start up a new nonprofit childcare center at that location that would ultimately serve 80 to 100 children. The funding would be allocated under a forgivable loan structure such that if the center operates for a prescribed amount of time, ultimately that loan would be forgiven in increments very similar to what we do with affordable housing. So we're finalizing the funding agreement with that entity, and also anticipate bringing that to the council at the April 5th meeting. Third one is the Child Care Provider Network. This was a Office of Education proposal to both the city and the county to help support in-home care providers within Woodland. Currently, there is not a very strong network of in-home care providers. which is in stark contrast to West Sacramento that has a very well-connected and well-supported network. And so the proposal is for $230,000 shared equally between the city and the county to stand up a child care provider network and support those in-home care providers to ensure that they continue to operate, but also provide opportunities for them to grow as a business and potentially expand and become larger child care providers. The second aquatic facility doesn't need a whole lot of discussion. Clearly, there's a funding priority towards that project with release flexibility. With the ARP dollars now, our recommendation is to allocate $1 million of one-time funding here towards the project. The mobile farmers market truck. This is a project that is being operated currently in West Sacramento under a pilot. The Center for Land-Based Learning secured a grant several years ago to pilot a mobile farmers market that goes out and provides fresh produce to targeted low-income areas in their community. In doing so, also provide food literacy as well as perishable goods in partnership with the food bank. It's been a very successful project. They're looking to expand that into Woodland. They submitted a request to Yolo County for some matching funds. The county dedicated $232,000 to go towards the capital component of the proposed truck. CLBL has asked that the city consider funding the gap and working with them. That gap, they feel confidently if the city were to dedicate $225,000, they could establish that program within a year and then secure additional sustainable ongoing funding for the truck. And so our recommendation is to make that commitment and have them come back with a formal proposal on a project so we can provide better details to the council on what that might look like for Woodland. And then lastly, expanded youth program hours. This is a consistent item that you've seen in the spending plan where we will take $25,000 to help offset the cost for expanding summer programs for working families that need access to all-day camps for their kids. So Christine and her staff have established and are now marketing expanded summer camp opportunity. And then additional funding would be available should demand for not just that program, but other camps be identified. And so we're looking to have money available and at the ready if the need materializes. Infrastructure, real quick, $3.52 million, mostly towards storm drain infrastructure and mostly towards the outfall channel project, which will be on your agenda on April 5th as well for authorizing award of the bid for the project. This is another partnership project with the county where they're responsible for 26% of the cost of the project based on prior agreements. And so the city's share of the project, which is just shy of $4 million, is $3,068,000, and we're proposing to use ARP one-time funding to pay for this due to the fact that the storm drain fund is not adequately funded to pay for this. The only other alternative would be to allocate general fund dollars or institute a storm drain fee that would cover the cost and take time to collect the revenue sufficient to pay for this critical piece of infrastructure. And then moving back up to the top, neighborhood traffic calming, as well as sidewalk and pothole repair. We propose to allocate $150,000 a year for 3 years, starting next year to supplement the traffic calming program. We continue to see substantial interest and requests from neighborhoods throughout the community that would like to see the traffic calmed in their neighborhoods, sidewalks repairs, as well as street repairs. And so with a reduction in gas tax dollars through the COVID pandemic, this would help restore some of that funding and allow us to actually augment the traffic calming commitment that the council has made over the last 2 years through the general fund. And then last but not least, sustainability. So again, wanting to support the council's new focus of sustainability and climate resiliency, and provide some funding to help advance projects that not only reduce our carbon, but position us to adapt to a changing climate. And so these could be projects for the city to invest in energy efficiency upgrades or alternative vehicle procurement, but they could also be community-based projects. And so our proposal is to allocate $400,000, work with the Sustainability Advisory Committee as well as Environmental Services staff to identify key projects to best advance impact in this area. So that concludes my presentation on this. Welcome council feedback and direction on the spending plan. We will return to council if the council is supportive of this framework in two respects. One, we will, through the budget process, where there is allocation that impacts city projects, we will build those allocations of ARP dollars into our budget. So you'll see that through our budget season this year. And then secondly, as identified, there's several partner funding agreements where there's outside entities that we would engage with. We will bring those funding agreements forward as we develop those agreements in more detail, and council will affirm those allocations with those agreements before them. So that concludes my presentation, and look forward to council feedback.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. There's a thorough overview of a lot of time. I appreciate all of the work that you and Kim and Evis did to really kind of sift through all the requirements. I think back to when we first formed this the subcommittee, and the requirements for spend were super clear. So just working through that interpretation of what it is, I appreciate all the time that staff took to go into this. So I'll open it up to my council for any comments. Councilmember Garcia Cadena, I see your hand raised, and then we have Councilmember Stollard on deck.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I had a question about the outdoor seating, permanent, creating some permanent outdoor seating out there. How will that affect the streetlights? Are we going to keep them flashing like this? Will a more permanent structure allow for the lights to be turned back on? What was the thought behind that?
Excellent question, and still some work to be done there. But I think for two reasons. One, from a safety standpoint, having the lights on flash continues to be our traffic engineers' strong recommendation if we're going to have those parklets on the street. So even if we were to reinforce them, and they're actually fairly well protected, there's filled barricades underneath those enclosures right now that provide a strong measure of safety, and actually probably the safest of any that I've seen. So I think, the question around what do we do with Main Street through downtown and with respect to the lights is going to have to be a broader question about, do we continue to have those on flash? We've naturally heard a lot of good feedback from the community around how much more pedestrian friendly it is downtown. We have to balance that with the other comments that we receive about how frustrating it is to have to stop at every light through downtown. But what I think has happened, right, we've seen some of that traffic normalize, and folks that used to sort of blow through downtown are now using alternate routes if their intention is not to come to a destination in the downtown. So we will be providing a more comprehensive discussion on this to the council in May as we sort of settle where the restaurants want to land with respect to keeping their parklets and scaling them back, and then use that feedback to provide some options for the council to consider relative to how we want to treat the intersections.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stollard.
Thank you, Mayor Vega. I just wanted to express my gratitude to the federal government, particularly the White House, for basically removing the leash that was put on us initially. This conversation started 6 months ago, and at that time we had pretty significant constraints. And there's many things in that plan that would not be there but for the $10 million basically. We have unfettered discretion to allocate those dollars pretty much. And we would not be able to put $1 million into the pool project from this funding had that not been done. So it took a while, but I feel the process has been one that's benefited us in this jurisdiction. I look forward to seeing those items in the budget. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Councilmember Stoller.
I have a question for the city manager.
Go ahead.
City manager, we've allocated like $3 million for improvement to some of our infrastructure. Assuming that Congress, and I know it's assuming, passes some infrastructure bill, and let's just say they gave us $3 million, replace that infrastructure, are we allowed to reallocate that other $3 million?
Yeah, it depends on where we're at with the spending of those dollars, but we're tracking very closely, where that infrastructure funding and those bills are going to go. And certainly if there's an opportunity to replace any of this funding through grants or other, federal allocations, we will do so. But we can't, particularly in respect to the storm drain project, we cannot wait to see where the federal government's going to land with those allocations of dollars and whether we will compete for that and go through that process. That piece of infrastructure is vulnerable and is desperate need, and we're in a perfect year this year to replace it. So we're going to lean forward on that one, but going to be watching that very closely. If there's an opportunity, we'll absolutely replace those dollars.
And it goes across the board. It's just, we're allowed to move that money around.
Yep. Yeah, this will be a dynamic spending plan, right? So tonight's action is, just, substantial direction and guidance, but we will continue to monitor every opportunity to leverage this funding.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to have a comment on the $500,000 for the project with the Yolo County Housing Authority. That's a small part of a pretty big project that's slated for the entire area there, consisting of the Housing Authority's property, which is substantial. And they also want to add some property, which would include not just low-income housing, but also market rate housing, be integrated in that project. So it's a worthwhile project, and I look forward to seeing that completed someday. Hope to be alive by then. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Landsberg. Okay, so I don't see, do we have any public comment?
No, none.
No? Okay, well, I was hoping. No hands raised, I don't see any.
No.
Okay. All right, so I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to accept staff recommendation or receive the update and provide, receive the feedback, Ken. So this is to accept recommendation and the allocation of funds as outlined in the staff report. Is that a?
Yeah. All we're seeking from the council this evening for clarity, right, is concurrence on the framework that I've outlined for you, any of the specific line items, other line items that you would like to see considered. But with absence of any changes to the plan, we will continue to move forward in the context of our budget and conversations with our community partners to bring these projects forward.
Okay, great. So, we need a motion?
No motion needed.
No motion?
Yeah, just
right.
comments and feedback.
Okay, well, there you go. After I got the verbiage correct, and you say no, you don't want one, so. Okay.
Plus Ethan feels better if we have a motion to accept the spending plan.
I'm okay with you skipping the motion.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Do we have any memorial adjournments? The last item is adjourning. No? Okay. All right. Community, friends, thank you. And next month we'll actually see you physically.
Good night, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Good
All
night.
right, thank you.
Good night, colleagues.
Right.
Good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you.